Hey, what's up everyone? This is Music Tech Help Guy and welcome to episode 2 of my sampler instrument design series. In this video, we're going to still be exploring the optimized map. We're going to dive into the main volume or amplifier envelope in sampler, and I'm also going to show you how to set up filter motion that's based on velocity. So when you play a certain velocity, you get one filter setting, you play another velocity and you get a different filter setting. And I'm also going to do a little bonus thing at the end that is totally not necessary. It's a totally optional step, but how to use the vocoder with your sampler instruments to enhance them even further. So what I did off screen is I went through my kitchen and I found a bunch of glasses, wine glasses, beer glasses, just smaller drink glasses. And I found just a nice range of pitches just by, flicking them with my finger. And surprisingly, I was able to get almost a major scale out of them. And so I lined them up in order from lowest pitch to highest pitch. And then I used a field recorder and recorded a sample of each of the glasses. And then I dropped those samples into Logic and I created this instrument. So let me give you just a little quick teaser of what the instrument sounds like, and then I'll show you how to make this instrument. And I'll also make sure to include the samples this time if you want to work along with me. And 10 bonus points if you recognize the song. So I'm calling this sort of like a fantasy music box type of instrument. And the fact that I'm using more than one sample rather than just a single sample like I did in my quick sampler video a while back is giving it even more variation. And the fact that I've set up some velocity sensitivity controls for the filter, this is also giving it some more variation. Okay, so before I jump into the tutorial, I need to quickly tell you about today's sponsor, Boombox. Boombox is an innovative platform that is changing the game for musicians, producers, and audio engineers everywhere. With Boombox, you get secure file storage from everything from individual tracks to full DAW sessions. And collaborating has never been easier. Invite fellow collaborators to your projects where they can provide time-stamped feedback directly on your tracks. You can also manage your projects and feedback from their iOS and Android mobile apps, upload large files directly from your desktop using the Sync app for macOS, and it's more than just file storage. Boombox also allows you to showcase your work with a unique artist profile, making it easy to connect with other creatives around the world. And don't forget about Boombot AI, your personal assistant for songwriting and music production. If you're ready to say goodbye to Dropbox for good, head over to boombox.io and claim your 4 GB of free storage today, or upgrade to one of their paid plans if you need more storage space and additional pro features. Okay, so let's make an instrument. I have all of the samples here. I've already sort of trimmed them up in advance and added some fades to them. I've also added just a very simple compressor to them just to kind of level out the dynamics a bit. Some were a little louder than others. So it sounds like I've got like about 1.5 octaves of samples. And you can add whatever effects you want to process these to, if you need to do noise reduction or anything like that, you can do that at this point. And what I like to do is once I've added like sort of my bass effects, which for me is just the compressor, I'm going to select that track, hit Control B, and I'm going to bounce these in place. So I'll put this on a new track and I'll mute the original. You can also choose to normalize at this point in time if you want. So here are all of the samples. Still a little bit of dynamic variation, but that's totally okay. One shortcut that I highly recommend you create an assignment for is the Slice at Transient shortcut. So to do that, go up to Logic Pro Key Commands, Edit Assignments, or press Option K, and search up the word transient, and you're looking for this one, Slice at Transient Markers. By default, this does not have a shortcut assigned to it, but you can just select that, click Learn by Key Position, and for this, I like to use Shift Option Command T. And so what this shortcut does is any region you select, you can press Shift Option Command T, and that'll split that region up into multiple regions at the transients. So this is super helpful if you're doing any sort of sampling. The sample file that I'll include in the video description and comments below will be this one. It'll be just, an uncut version of all of the samples so you can follow along with me. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these samples, drag them over here into the track header area. As we did last time, we're going to use the sampler optimized map option, because what this will do is it'll automatically map each of the samples to the correct pitch. And you can see there's not a very wide key range for these. So I'm really going to have to, almost all of the low notes. All the low notes are going to be just one sample, but the higher notes will have multiple samples. I think there's one sample in there that's maybe just a little too harsh. That one right there. So if you want to remove a sample, just kind of find the sample on your keyboard, go to the zone list, and then with that sample selected, you can just press delete. What you are going to have to do is come back to the keyboard here and just drag that sample across so that this sample that's on E flat is also going to play this note on D. Okay, so in the previous video, I made the samples one shots. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to go up to synth, and let's talk about envelope 1 here. Envelope 1 is the default envelope that controls the volume of sampler, or the amplifier, or amplitude, whatever you want to call this. So with the attack time, when you pull this out, this means that the sound's going to fade in more. So if you're trying to create some sort of like a pad type instrument, you might pull that out. Likewise, the release time is going to control how long the sound lasts for when you release the key, or when a MIDI note off message is sent. So for an instrument like this, I'm probably going to want quite a bit of release time, just for those notes to naturally ring out. And then the last control is in the middle here. It's really two controls. The up and down is the sustain amount, and then the left and right is the decay time. So what you can do with decay time is you can make the sound sort of decay down to a certain sustain level, a certain volume level after a certain amount of time. So here, this is going to cut out more of like the body of the sound, and it's going to accentuate the transient a bit more. It looks like we're also clipping pretty heavily, so I'm going to pull down the volume control here as well. Yeah, so we're really starting to sound like we have like a wine glass music box here. For right now, I'm not going to use either of these modulation routings. We are going to create another one with velocity, but let's just test this out with some MIDI. I've got this little MIDI recording here that I made off screen. Let's just see what that sounds like as is. Okay, it's a little frumpy on the low end, and that's because all of these notes are all basically playing off of one sample, since we only have an octave and a half, and it's like really in the upper range. In terms of effects, I want to kind of soften the glassiness a bit. Obviously, I want to add some maybe delay or reverb. So I'm going to start with the Chroma Glow plugin. And in Chroma Glow, the modern tube setting is really great at like warming up different sounds. So it's saturating it a little bit, but it's also kind of taming and making the top end a little more controlled, at least to my ear. Let's add some EQ as well. And on the EQ, I just want to look out for any like sub-low frequencies that don't really need to be there. Yeah, all this right here. Maybe I'll bring up the top end just a little bit. Let's add some reverb. Once again, I'm going to use Native Instruments Realm, but you can use any reverb you like. I just really love Realm for, sort of ambient sound design like this. Yeah, we're really getting somewhere now. And I think before Realm, I'm going to add some delay as well. So I'm going to use the stereo delay again. And I think I'm going to use an eighth note and a dotted eighth note. Let's see what that sounds like. So this is still pretty simple sounding. One thing you can use if I want this to sound more like a pluck, or maybe I want these notes to play in octaves, the Note Repeater MIDI effects plugin is really effective for this. So I'm going to throw the Note Repeater on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the time synced delay. I'm going to set this to a really low value, maybe somewhere between like 15 and 30 milliseconds. I'm going to set the number of repeats to just 1. I'm going to turn down the velocity ramp. So now for every 1 note I play, I'm actually going to get 2 notes. And if you want to make more out of that delay, you can pull the delay time up a bit more. What I like to do is I like to make the delay either like up an octave or down an octave. So let's try up an octave, which is going to be 12 semitones. That's really cool. Let's try down an octave, -12. Cool, I like that. Either or would work just fine. I am going to pull back the delays a little bit more. I'm going to pull back the feedback on the delays as well. And I'm going to call this a fantasy music box instrument. What I'm going to do is in Sampler, I'm going to save this instrument. So I'll go up to Save As. I'll call this fantasy music box. And then if I want to store this setting with all of the effects on it, I can go over to the library, click Save. And again, I'll just call this fantasy music box. And I can recall that patch at any time. Now, there's one more thing I'm going to do to this because I just think it's cool. I'm going to create another instrument track, and I'm going to load up the EVOC20 Vocoder synth. If you want to learn more about how to use this in interesting ways with the voice, I have several videos on this. Just search it up on the channel. You'll find it. So we're actually going to use the fantasy music box as a source to control the vocoder. So the way the vocoder works is you have to set an analysis input. Normally, this would be like your microphone, so you can speak into the vocoder. But for this, we're going to set the fantasy music box track as the sidechain analysis input. And then what you have to do is set this to vocoder mode. And you do need to have some sort of MIDI on the vocoder track. So I'll call this Vocoder Layer. I could use just the same thing. So basically what you're hearing is for every note that's in the fantasy music box track, we're triggering the EVOC20 to play, and it's going to play the notes that you place here. Now, they can be different things, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a bit. But first, let's find a preset that actually sounds decent. I'm going to go to Vintage Vocoder, and I'm going to use the rough 5-band vocal. And then with the two together. And so that's just going to add that little bit of, vocoder synth underneath the existing, part here. But what you can also do is if you don't want the vocoder to play the same thing as, the main melody, you can try putting like the chords down here. So basically what I've done here is I've taken the chords from, the musical example, which are just C, A minor, F, and G. And now the vocoder is just going to play those chords, but it's still going to play in the rhythm of the fantasy music box. So that's already really cool, but let's take this one step further. And let's go back into Sampler. And what we're going to do is we're going to make the filter react to the velocity of notes. So if I look in my MIDI recording here, you can see there's a bit of a range of velocities. And what I can do is I can make the filter cutoff of filter 1 cut more of the high frequencies out when I press the key softer, so a lower velocity, and I can have the filter be more open with louder velocities. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to go down to one of your modulation routings down here. For the source, you're going to set this to maximum. For the target, you're going to set this to filter 1 cutoff. For the via, you're going to set this to velocity. And then what you're going to do is set like a low range where you want the range to start at. So that would be like our lowest velocity. And then you pull up the amount just like so. And this creates a velocity range on the filter cutoff. And so now higher velocities are going to be less filtered and lower velocities are going to be more filtered. And again, I'm using a low pass filter here. So that's a filter that cuts the high end. You can try out different filter types. You can play around with the resonance and drive to, dial in a sound you like. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. So I'm probably also going to want to resave this patch. So I'll click save, call it Fantasy Music Box. Replace it. And another thing you can do is if you want this vocoder layer to always be here, you can put these in a track stack. So I'll put these in a summing stack, and I can save the entire track stack as a library preset as well. And so anytime I load up that Fantasy Music Box 2, it's going to create a track stack and then give me both of these instruments with these settings. So it's really cool that you can recall individual instruments, or you can create multi-instruments with multiple layers in them. And there you go. That wraps up episode 2 of my sampler instrument design series. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.